Yes, hello everyone. Welcome today to what's going to be a bit of a longer series, and that's a look at the TV show Westworld. A number of comments for quite a while, actually, even way back 6 months ago, were asking me to look at Westworld, and I thought now was a really good time to do it. So this is going to be just a short introduction. This is only going to be an introduction to episodes 1 and 2, and the next longer version of this, which takes in the rest of season 1, will go on Free Voice next week. But I wanted to start the process of giving insights into what this television show might have been doing, and I'm only going to look at season 1 because I feel that the little I looked into past the first season, it was already moving in a direction that was just becoming too confusing and losing a lot of what I would call the original knowledge that was in the first season. So I don't think we need to look past season 1 at all if we're just looking for knowledge. It's similar to Lost, right? Lost was a useful show for 4 or 5 seasons and then began to just move into areas that were not really positive anymore, that you might say got corrupted. So we only want to look at this show before its corruption state, which I think is season 1 is non-corruption. Okay. So let's look at a little bit in the first 2 episodes and what it can tell us, of course, about ourselves and our reality, because we're not really dissecting a TV show. We're not really dissecting a TV show, just like we're not dissecting movies. We're dissecting how the universe is presenting into symbolic mythological form insights about our own world and insights about ourselves. You might say we've lost fairy tales and we've lost mythology from our world. Movies and television have replaced it. They are our myths. They are the things that others would talk about the myth of Prometheus together, and they could talk about Persephone and Hades and whatnot. That was like the standard teaching tools that everybody knew and everybody could converse on. Well, now it's certain movies that everyone has seen, and you can talk about the movie in detail because what you're saying about it, someone else has seen it. So you have to look at it this way, that they are our myths. Generally, the TV shows and the movies that are created now are garbage. You might call them junk myths or programming or conditioning myths. But every once in a while, like I talked about, the universe seems to implant things in there that are beyond what is normally recognized. And let's begin with Westworld. So in Westworld, of course, we have 3 different types of, I don't want to call them people, right? 3 different types of things, you might say. So first we have what they're calling hosts, which are the robots, which are the people of this theme park who have been created seemingly, at least at this stage in the first 2 episodes, right, have seemingly been created for the gratification of the what seem to be human people, rich human people, who are coming to have experiences. We have the people who are coming, they're known as guests. And then I guess you have the group that is running the show, that is in charge of looking after the robots and the guests and the logistics and everything. And we don't really have a name for them, but we can call them programmers, controllers. Those are really good words for it. So those are the 3 sections we have. Westworld becomes an important tool in our own inner understanding when we start to realize that the hosts, the robots, represent us. That we in this reality are the robots. So this is really, really important. And the word that's been chosen, of course, host. Now, host is a word that can also, well, in one sense, it's a word that means somebody who is a greeter, somebody who takes you to your table at a restaurant. So it's also a word that represents that which a parasite eats from, right? So a parasite will eat from a host. That's pretty standard scientific sort of terminology. So another way of seeing this is that the robots in the theme park are hosts for parasites. The parasites, of course, being the guests. So the humans of this particular of Westworld are actually parasitic entities that come only into the theme park in order to um, fulfill their own potentially strange desires. Now we'll find in season 2 that there seems to be another, or I mean in episode 2, there's a different layer to what the guests may be coming to do, is they're not just coming to debauch necessarily, but they're certainly parasitic entities coming to live off the hosts. Then we have the programmers controllers, who at the beginning of it you tend to, when you first watch Westworld the first time, of course you tend to right away believe that all the controllers and the programmers are also humans that are there to run a business and make money off these guests. But it doesn't take long to start realizing, well, you can't really tell the difference between a host and a guest, a host and a human, a robot and a human in this. So how many of the so-called programmers, this was right in my mind in the first couple of episodes, how many of these programmer controller people are really also robots that have just been programmed to go through a particular function, rather than functioning in the park as a member of the Wild West scenarios, but as a functioning agent of the overall work of the park. It would make total sense that for maintenance and for cleaning and everything else, of course, you would just have a robot. Now again, when you start to begin to dig into the idea that the hosts are us, you have to remember that, and we'll get to this with the strange programming, that the robots have very particular scripts. Now the scripts can change, right? Ford, Bernard, these other people, they can change the script of the robots at any time. So there's not only one particular script, but they should be on particular tracks. There should be specific tracks, like a record groove, that they will run on. And they shouldn't deviate too far off the record groove. They should, in a sense, stay pretty clear. They'll of course adjust to scenarios and things that happen around them. They've given them a very lifelike appearance, but at the same point, there's a lot of things the robots shouldn't do because it's not in their programming. And so when we take that back to us, we have to start thinking, well, if they represent us, then that means we, in a sense, have been programmed. We, in a sense, on some level, are an unknowing robot, just like the robots in Westworld don't know they're robots until a bit of self-awareness begins to spark in them to look at their situation and look at who and what they are. We tend to believe we are the same as the robots, that we are just people living in this particular world, unprogrammed, that we have free will, that we're thinking, but the free will that's there can be just like the robots. It's a very limited type of free will based on particular scripted responses and particular programming that will let us go in 10 or 20 or 30 directions, but won't let us go in 80 or 90 directions. So that's the first key step of I think, if you're going to look into now the first season of Westworld, is you have to begin to get to see what's being represented right away by what you might call the characters or the creations. Now the names of the characters in Westworld is also very, very important, and you don't want to skip the importance of the names. The first two names that are valuable to look at is on the control side. We have Ford and we have Bernard Marx. Now the names of Ford and Bernard are important names that come through Huxley's novel Brave New World. Ford is, of course, in Brave New World the what you might call the god of Brave New World, who doesn't actually, Henry Ford, who doesn't live anymore, but is treated like a Christ figure. And the main character of the novel is Bernard, and he is the one that is going through this crisis of not not fitting in with the society of the way things are expected, and Bernard wants something different, wants a different understanding than what's being presented in the novel. And I think these two names are not chosen randomly for the two characters of Westworld. There's this definite connection to the novel Brave New World, and when I go into the next video on Free Voice, I'll go into some of that, some of the connections between Westworld and Brave New World, and how they've sort of crossed some of these ideas into the television show. But the names of all the characters, that includes Dolores, it includes William, it includes everybody. Everybody's name is carefully chosen here. I'll go through the opening sequence at another time. There is things in the opening sequence that's useful to see, but we'll skip that for now. In the very first original scene, and it's interesting because it's called the first episode is called The Original. So in the first scene, we meet Dolores, and of course we find later that Dolores is the original, right? She was the first robot host that was made in Westworld. So it's telling us already that this first episode is really about her. That the whole episode it's not the original from the standpoint of the series. It's a story about Dolores, and we see her, and she's talking, and she's being talked to by somebody, and mentioning she's in a dream, and asked, "Would you like to wake up? Would you like to wake up from this dream?" And her response was something like, "Yes, because I'm afraid," or "Yes, because I'm terrified." It was something like that. But the answer was, "Would you like to wake up from the dream?" And that's so it's already telling us that the entire nature of this show, this is the first words we're hearing in the whole series, is telling her, is being told she's in a dream, and would you like to wake up from the dream? So there's the foundation of what you're looking at. And in a sense, that is the foundation of our own life, right? The foundation of testing the reality to see if it's a dream or not, and then asking, in a sense, yourself, would you like to wake up from the dream? Her next question becomes, have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? And we find later this question is being asked as a way to test the robots to make sure that they are still being robots. Because if the robot starts questioning the nature of their reality, starts questioning their world, starts understanding what the parasitic entities, the human guests, have been doing to them for generations of time, and the robots have some sort of self-awareness, of course they're going to attempt to break out. So from the controller standpoint, the biggest test is not making sure that the robots are not testing the nature of their reality. And at this point, of course, Dolores is answering no, but we don't really know if that's true. Is Dolores aware enough already at this point that she's able to see through the questioning and be able to lie, you might say, or is she still at this point being truthful? But right away in the first scene, we've already, this first little tiny 1-minute scene, we've been given the foundational piece of the Westworld story. Next, we see the character Teddy. And what was interesting to me was, of course, Teddy is presented like any other newcomer coming in on the train, coming in for the first time to Westworld. But it doesn't take long to realize that he's a host. He's a robot just like everyone else. And it was interesting to try to get a sense of, well, why do they want to show a host as being a newcomer, as sort of again, one of the first instances we're seeing in the show. And I wasn't sure when I first watched it if this is trying to just be a crossover of getting us to not be sure who anybody is, who's a robot or who's not a robot, or if there was something else. And of course, as episodes go on, we begin to understand why they did this. But I don't want to go into too further into this area. We meet the man in black, who is, of course, unnamed. And at the beginning, in the initial episode, he is presented as sort of almost like the ultimate evil, right? His first the presentation of him at Dolores's ranch as part of the crazy killing gang is presented almost like he's the lead psycho killer, and particularly treats Dolores unbelievably horribly. Now, we don't see just how horribly he treats her, because what happens is, and we'll talk about this in episode when I get to episode 2, he drags her off, what seems to drag her off into the barn and shuts the door. Now, we are assuming what happens behind the door, because that's what the makers of the show wanted us to think. But something completely different may have happened behind that door, as we'll get to in episode 2. But this initial idea of the Man in Black is we've got this evil, but it's been very clear already from the first instance we've met him that he's been coming for 30 years, and then we are reminded in the next scene after this, there's been a discussion that between the controllers that there hasn't been a critical failure in the park for 30 years. So it's already telling us that 30 years ago there was a critical failure, and this particular Man in Black, whoever he is, we find out who he is soon enough, but he's been coming for 30 years, so therefore he had to be a part of the time when the critical failure happened. Something about this experience has been making him come again and again and again. And, but we'll get to all this in a moment. Very important is that first the number 30. So 30 is not a number at random. It's usually a number of transformation, often of destiny. It's often presented quite often in religious terms as a time of change, or time if someone has been in the desert for 30 days, or someone has been in meditation for 30 days, or someone has gone 30 years on a quest, or whatever. This tends to be like to represent a time frame for transformation to happen. Keep in mind, too, when you're looking at this Man in Black character as sort of what you need to connect it to, and again, this is from the universal idea, not so much necessarily. There's things that the creators of this show were doing, that the producers and the writers are doing from their conscious concepts, and then there's things, again, that the universe is trying to present into the symbology, in a sense, influencing how these writers and producers produce the show. So the Man in Black has to take you into the Stephen King novel series Dark Tower, and it's going to also take you into the symbolism of the Man in Black in Lost, which, as we saw in Lost, I tried to show you in that description. Again, the Man in Black is presented as this evil character, as the evil part of Lost, and the Jacob character is presented as the good character on the surface. But if you really dig into how they really operate and what their main motivations are, it could be seen as the completely opposite, that the Man in Black is actually the most good character of the two, and the Jacob character is actually the evil, manipulative one. So again, once you begin to see that this Man in Black character may not be what you're seeing on face value, that face value is giving you one thing, but what's really going on with the character may be something else, again starts to unravel this instance. We see the complete day, and then there's Teddy back on the train, coming back into the park again. And so right away we are dealing with the idea of time loops, something I've talked about quite a bit over the years and talked about in my book. So again, trying to take this back to ourselves, how much of our own day-to-day world is some sort of loop, some sort of controlled, scripted behavior, some sort of, just because we're not reliving day after day after day, perhaps we're reliving, 50 or 60 years at a time. The question is, how deep is the groove potentially running that we're on right now, or how many theoretical grooves can we possibly have that could be part of our completely scripted, time-looped reality? And a lot of people don't want to have to think. They want to believe that their day-to-day moments are completely free choice, totally new, completely fresh every moment, when that may not be true. Whatever it is you're doing, the lunch that you're eating today, This might be the millionth time you've eaten that lunch on this particular day in this particular world in this particular reality. It's quite likely one of the reasons so many people many people can get very, very bored in this world. And the boredom might really be not a sense of uh, the society, the modern society is tricking humans into instant gratification ideas and et cetera, et cetera. It might be deeper levels of memory coming up from if the time loop theory is correct of our own reality. If you've watched go watch a particular movie and you kind of say, well, this movie's kind of boring, but you haven't just seen it once. You think you're seeing it once the first time you've went to the theater to see it, but maybe you've gone to that theater, a million times and seen the same movie a million times, and something deep within you is pulling up, reminding you you're being tricked to think that it's new, that it's a completely new world, but you've been in the new world a million times. So it would make sense that a boredom might try to be surfacing, because how do you experience newness when you've had a million lives? And that might be one of the real great challenges in the human world, is how to break free from the loops, how to break free from the conditioning. Now we come to a really, really important scene, and it's one that I missed when I first watched it. It's on Teddy's first return, and I missed this when I first watched Westworld. And it was actually, I'm rewatching the reviews of a group of two guys called Buzz Talks, and I'll leave the link below. They were outstanding. They were reviewing these episodes like 2 days after they first came on, and they tended to be 7 or 8 episodes ahead of what was going on. They were almost always right. They were fantastic in how they were able to break down what they were seeing and catch little things. And this is one of the little things that they caught. I didn't catch it. And it was when Teddy returns, and we see him go through the same scripted routine of he gets off the train, he goes through, he bumps the guy, continues on. There's the sheriff trying to get people to join the posse. What's important is when he bumps the guy the second time, Teddy drops his hat. First time he just bumped him, kind of stared at him, gave him a little wink with his finger, but the second time he bumps him and he drops the hat, picks him up, has a different response. Now, this is important because these are programmed robots. This bump is supposed to happen every single time he comes off the train, and there should be an exact specific way the bump happens. There shouldn't be any deviation. The robots will only deviate from their script based on what a human interaction will cause them to move to different lines of programming, right? So as long as there's no human guest, we'll call them a guest, as long as there's no guest interacting with one of these robots, the script should be perfect. That's one of the things about a robot. A robot is scripted and it's programmed, and it will do the exact same thing over and over and over again exactly. So the fact that Teddy has just done something different than what we saw the first time, he drops the hat, indicates that there's glitches in the robot's programming. The robot's programming, for one reason or another, is not clean, or it's breaking down. Things are happening to the robots, and and it's really interesting because it's showing that right now it's just little. Teddy drops the hat, and it's obvious that the controllers or the programmers, there's either not enough of them or they're not paying enough attention to be that closely monitoring every single one of these robots in the park to make sure that the behavior is exact, because it's a little tiny thing. It's easy to be missed. But the point being is, if you start missing the little things that the robots are doing, they're going to become bigger things and bigger things and bigger things. And eventually the robot's programming is going to break more and more and more and more, because if you don't catch them at the beginning when they're small, the glitches will become bigger and bigger. So that is an unbelievably important foreshadowing scene that, as simple as that is, the robot's programming on must be all levels is starting to break down. Who is breaking down, why they're breaking down, what's the connection between who is and who isn't, we don't know yet, and of course we don't fully understand as the season goes on, but To me, that scene is so important because, again, these glitches will start to appear, and the programmers aren't paying enough attention to the small details. The next thing, one of the last things we'll talk about, episode 1, is the father of Dolores, played by called Peter Abernathy, and the actor who plays this character did a fantastic job. I mean, the acting is generally really, really good in Westworld, but he was outstanding because he had so many different types of roles he had to play, from the regular father to the guy going through the existential crisis to the stuttering robot to I mean, his acting was beyond spectacular. But what's interesting is that is the dad finds, right, a photograph. And it's also very interesting that they blurred the photograph a bit because they don't want to really give an indication of they wanted to make it as such that I think it was hard for anybody to know the sorry, I'm just fixing my headset. I don't think they want anybody to know what year it is. They don't want to know if it's modern, if it's 1,000 years in the future. So they kind of blurred the photograph enough to know that the photograph is from somebody outside Westworld, but it's not sure the time frame. But for some reason, this photograph somehow bypasses Abernathy's programming, or perhaps we find later Ford/Bernard has slipped in certain pieces of programming, maybe into just certain individual robots that could have the possibility of having a self-reflective nature turned on, you might say. But something in this turns on the character, the father character, into deep introspection, where he just seems to have been staring at the photograph for an entire night. And when Dolores comes out again the next morning, again following her exact script, the father's very clear. I had a question you're not supposed to ask, and I just got the answer. And this scene is important because it is one of the potential outcomes of the experience of having a true awakening. So much of true awakening is presented as if it's going to be love and light and happiness and you're going to be bursting with joy. But as I talked about in Falling for Truth, depending which type of awakening that you occur, whether it's mind, heart, or gut, your response after is going to be completely different. A heart awakening is going to be very, very joyous, of course. Abernathy seems like he's gone through a gut awakening. He's gone through an awakening of seeing that his reality and he himself is fake. And all of the people in his world, particularly the people closest to him, in this case his wife and Dolores, are false, that they are robotic, non-real creatures. He has seen through the nature of reality. And of course, that's not going to fill you with joy and happiness. That's going to absolutely shatter your mental state. It's going to shatter your ability to function. It's going to pull the foundation of your reality out from under your feet, which is what you're seeing from Abernathy. And a lot of those who've had real awakenings, particularly a lot of this type of awakening, they'll never write books about it. They'll never go on tours. They just deal with what they've realized for however long they're still alive and kind of keep their mouth shut about it. But Abernathy needs to tell his daughter Dolores, right? He needs to tell her that she needs to get out. She needs to leave. She needs to, because part of his programming is to protect his daughter. We saw that. That's one of the key elements of his programming, is protecting his daughter. So upon getting this information, that programming will still kick in. And so his first response on the awakening is how to get her out of there, so she's no longer having to deal with the horror of being a robot in Westworld. So that was really interesting. He shares with her a whispered comment that we find later in the episode is, these violent delights have violent ends. It comes from Romeo and Juliet. I don't remember the exact, I didn't look it up. I didn't go and check exactly which act and scene it appears that in the Shakespearean play. But we know it's linked to Romeo and Juliet, so this particular line is also going to be telling us there's something and that's been given to, it might say it's been given to Dolores through Abernathy. So being given to Dolores, it means it's also, we're also going to be playing in somehow the tragedy of the Romeo Juliet story, right? Because it's a love story that doesn't end happily, and so we're already being told that something similar will be a part of Westworld. They're worried later on. We see in episode 2 that this will act like a virus to the robots, almost, and we'll see that tends to be the case. He also tells her very clearly, the devils are all here. The devils are all here, and so it's pretty obvious that who Abernathy is referring to as the devils, of course, are the guests, and the guests would be humans in that world. And again, we have to step back and look at how have humans really treated each other in this reality. I mean, we are not the nicest creatures in the world. Let's be very clear. The presentation of humans as being somehow advanced and wonderful and whatever, but the actual actions of the human group, and I don't just mean the people in the highest power positions, I mean average everyday people. They don't treat each other very, very nicely. They don't treat animals and nature. I mean, this is a pretty nightmarish realm, simply because of the action of a whole lot of humans, not everybody, right? But a huge majority treat this reality the same way the guests treat the hosts in Westworld. The episode ends with Dolores reminding her questioner that she's following her programming, right? She wouldn't hurt a living thing. And now you have to wonder, again, is Dolores lying? Is Dolores just saying what she knows the programmers need to hear, or is she still true? But right as the episode ends and she walks past the new father, there's the fly on her neck, and bang, she kills it. So at what point has Dolores actually, you might say, snapped from the programming? Where have we seen the snap in the programming? And I also want to just end this part with one other small detail, and that is the killing of the fly got me thinking, because I've been killing, I live on a farm. My house is filled with flies. And every once in a while a fly's on a window and it's just easier to let it out. But if you don't kill flies in late in the evening, they're going to keep you awake. You have to kill them. I'm not necessarily thrilled by it, but I like to sleep, But you have to then wonder, okay, how do the flies see us as humans? I mean, to the fly, they're just trying to live a fly's life and do whatever a fly does. And here are these psycho crazy humans constantly trying to wipe them out, constantly just killing their species if possible. To us, well, we're just killing a fly because it's bothering the hell out of us and we can't sleep. But how do the fly see us in the way that we're acting? So again, you have to rethrow this back into the whole, not just the idea of Westworld of the guests compared to hosts compared to controllers, but in our own reality, why should a parasitic force, because again, the guests in Westworld represent the parasitic force that have come into the Earth. The Earth is Westworld. The parasitic force has come into this realm and are basically using humans in a similar way that the humans in Westworld, the guests, are using the hosts. And if we don't treat flies and cows and all other things to a certain degree of what you might say respect, why should a parasitic force be expected to treat humans with respect? You see how some of these questions begin to open a lot of deeper doors into stepping into this reality, stepping into the place we reside on a day-to-day basis, and get us to ask these questions of who and what is going on here. Well, I've hit I didn't think it would take me 35 minutes just to go through episode 1, but it has taken me 35 minutes. So I haven't even got close to getting into episode 2, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, which was, there is some good stuff. I only have a half a page on episode 2, but I see it's going to take us a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, leave this as our introduction into, because Westworld begins to get deeper and deeper and deeper as the episode. It takes about 4 or 5 episodes, if I remember, to really start beginning into a heavy layer of depth. And then what I will do is, on Free Voice now, I will start moving over, and I'll try to do 2 or 3 episodes at a time over there. So a good 45-minute or 1 hour viewpoint of the next. So I'll try to do like maybe episodes 2 to 4 or something together. Because yeah, there was 9 episodes left, so that would be perfect. Three groups of 3, right? That equals 9. and take us through the rest of Westworld. Take us through this first season and try to really do the same thing I just done with the first episode. Partially try to decode what you're seeing on certain layers in the television show, but it's more important, what is the television show attempting to reveal about our own reality and our own self? And then after that, I think I'll also review the movie, the original Michael Crichton 1973 film that this TV show was based on, to see, in a sense, what was Michael Crichton's motive? What was his message? Because Crichton always has a message in his novels / the movies he created himself, not the movies that somebody else created from his books, but he actually did this one. And there's always an underlying really interesting message about reality or science or technology and the way those things interact or don't interact, and the dangers of it. So we'll also look into the movie when we're done, but that'll keep us going for a month. It takes me a while to watch all the episodes and make the lists and the information package for myself, so I can be ready to come on here and do this. So there you go. We got through just 1 episode today of the first season of Westworld, but we will get through the rest. I hope to be the next one on Free Voice this week, hoping for like Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. So you won't have to wait too long to continue with this. Thanks for keeping on a part of this journey. Keep us informed in the comments of your own views of Westworld or its relation to each other, and then we'll see you in 2 or 3 days with the next video, which will be the first one that goes on to Free Voice. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.